Jesus looks up, and his eyes follow the trembling, accusing hand. And in a corner, against the dark red wall, he sees Mary of Magdala, more immodest than ever, wearing, I would say, nothing on half of her body, because she is half naked from the waist upwards, draped in a kind of hexagonal net, decorated with little round objects which look like tiny pearls. But as she is in a half light, I cannot see her well. Jesus lowers his eyes once again. Mary, lashed by his indifference, stands up, whereas before she seemed somewhat depressed, and strikes a defiant pose. Mary Magdalene's conversion was not instantaneous. We know in the Gospels it is said that 7 devils were driven out of her, and that makes it seem that it was a very quick process. But no, it went on over quite a period of time. And so there's different encounters Jesus has with her. And I'm going to relate one particular one, which is extremely dramatic and involves a near murder of someone. Jesus is going towards Magdala. It's chapter 183 of the poem of the Man God. The group proceeds in silence. The main road becomes a town street, paved with 1 handbreadth wide square stones. The houses are more and more splendid and magnificent, surrounded by luxuriant, flourishing gardens and orchards. I'm under the impression that the elegant Magdala was for the Palestinians a kind of place of pleasure, like some towns around our lakes in Lombardy, Stresa, Gardone, Palanza, Bellagio, and so on. Among the rich Palestinians, there are many Romans who must have come from other places, such as Tiberias or Caesarea, possibly officials of the governor or merchants who export to Rome the most beautiful products of the Palestinian colony. Jesus proceeds, sure of himself, as if he knew where to go. He follows the contour of the lake, which reflects the houses and gardens built on its limits. A loud noise of crying people can be heard from a sumptuous house. It is the voices of women and children. The shrill voice of a woman shouts, "My son, my son." Jesus turns round and looks at his apostles. Judas steps forward. "No, not you," orders Jesus. "You, Matthew, go and find out." Matthew goes and comes back. "A brawl, Master. A man is dying. A Jew. The man who wounded him, a Roman, has run away. His wife, mother, and children have rushed to help him, but he is dying." "Let us go." Master, it happened in the house of a woman who is not his wife." "Let us go." Through the wide open door, they enter a large hall, which opens onto a lovely garden. The house seems to be divided by this kind of covered peristyle, which is full of pots with green plants, statues, and inlaid articles. It is a mixture of a hall and greenhouse. In a room, the door of which opens onto the hall, there are some women weeping. Jesus goes in confidently, but he does not pronounce his usual greeting. Among the men present, there is a merchant who obviously knows Jesus, because as soon as he sees him, he says, "The Rabbi of Nazareth," and greets him respectfully. "Joseph, what is the matter?" "Master, a stab wound in his heart. He is dying." "Why?" A grey-haired, unkempt woman stands up. She was kneeling near the dying man, holding his limp hand. And with distracted face and voice she shouts, because of her, she has turned him into a devil. Mother, wife, children no longer existed for him. Hell will have you, Satan." Jesus looks up and his eyes follow the trembling, accusing hand. And in a corner, against the dark red wall, he sees Mary of Magdala, more immodest than ever, wearing, I would say, nothing on half of her body, because she is half naked from the waist upwards, draped in a kind of hexagonal net, decorated with little round objects which look like tiny pearls. But as she is in a half light, I cannot see her well. Jesus lowers his eyes once again. Mary, lashed by his indifference, stands up, whereas before she seemed somewhat depressed, and strikes a defiant pose. Woman, says Jesus to the mother, do not curse. Tell me, why was your son in this house? I told you, because she infatuated him. She did. Silence. So he was in sin too, because he is an adulterer and an unworthy father of these innocent children. He therefore deserves his punishment. In this life and in the next one, there is no mercy for those who do not repent. But I feel sorry for your grief and for these innocent children. Is your house far? About 100 yards. Lift the man and take him there. It is not possible, master, says Joseph the merchant. He is breathing his last. Do as I tell you. They place a board under the body of the dying man, and the procession slowly moves out. They cross the street and go into a shady garden. The women go on crying loudly. As soon as they enter the garden, Jesus addresses the mother. Can you forgive? If you forgive, God will forgive. We must be kind-hearted to obtain grace. He has sinned and will sin again. It will be better for him to die, because if he lives, he will fall into sin again, and he will have to answer also for his ingratitude to God who saved him. But you and these innocent ones, and he points to the wife and children, would give yourselves up to despair. I've come to save, not to lose. Man, I tell you, stand up and be cured. The man begins to recover. He opens his eyes, sees his mother, wife, and children, and lowers his head shamefully. Son, son, says the mother, you were dead if he'd not saved you. Come to your senses. Don't be infatuated for a... Jesus interrupts the old woman. Be quiet, woman. Have mercy, as mercy was granted to you. Your house has been sanctified by a miracle, which is always the evidence of God's presence. That is why I could not work it where there was sin. You, at least, must endeavour to keep it such, even if he will not. Take care of him now. It is fair that he should suffer a little. Be good, woman. And you little ones, goodbye. Jesus has laid his hand on the heads of the two women and of the children. He then goes out, passing in front of the Magdalene, who followed the procession as far as the entrance of the house, where she remained, leaning against a tree. Jesus slackens his pace, as if he were waiting for his disciples. But I think he does so to give Mary a chance of making a gesture. But she does not. The disciples reach Jesus, and Peter cannot help muttering between his teeth an epithet appropriate to Mary, who, wishing to strike an attitude, bursts into a laugh of a weak triumph. But Jesus heard Peter's word and addresses him severely. Peter, I do not insult. Do not insult. Pray for sinners. Nothing else. Mary stops her trilling laughter, lowers her head, and runs away, like a gazelle, towards her house. And there the vision ends. But we can see that this Mary Magdalene was certainly someone who was extremely alluring and extremely dangerous, because she was taking this man away from his own family and causing a brawl between him and some unknown Roman. And but for Jesus' intervention, would have caused a death. This gives us the measure of the transformation of Mary Magdalene from this to the saint that she was. And we will see her in another vision, which I will recount, in France, in southern France, where the French know she lived her last years. An old woman now, all the beauty gone, but beautiful inside, having expiated for all that bad life she'd led. But that is for another vision on another day.